Hi, everyone. If you're tuning in live, thanks so much for joining us today. I am here with Elizabeth Adams. She gave a phenomenal keynote around the ever important topic of responsible AI and AI bias at the DataConnect conference earlier this month. So thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it. If you don't mind giving just a very brief overview of who you are, what you do for some of those people who are maybe not able to join us at the conference this year.
Sure. First off, thank you for the opportunity to kind of share a little bit more in depth, a little bit about my work and my research. So I'm here in Minneapolis. I've spent probably the last 5 years working on AI bias, for 3 years, more AI in society and bias and what happens when technology reaches out to communities in a way that doesn't feel safe for them. So advocating for safe technology in communities. And then I started going back into the corporate space and working with executives and leaders on adopting and operationalizing responsible AI. What does that mean? How does it fit within their existing culture? What kinds of changes do we need to make? And then I have since started my doctoral program at Pepperdine, where I am researching leadership of responsible AI and what all that means. And so super excited to be here to answer any questions.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. Like I mentioned, we're here today to answer some questions submitted by our virtual audience during your presentation. So thanks so much for joining us. We all appreciate taking out time of your day to chat with us. Our first question comes from Sarah J. from AEP. How would you recommend organizations engage internal IT audit functions? What would you recommend for an internal IT audit functions review? And have you found that independent ethics and data governance boards are actually effective in that?
Well, let's see. So from an IT audit perspective, I'm not really sure I understand that particular question and whether or not they're asking, should we start including AI ethics, responsible AI, or bringing in that governance piece to IT audits? But if we are, then I would say definitely take a look, and I think I mentioned this in the presentation, at the new NIST, National Institute of Standards Technology risk mitigation framework as a start to kind of figure out how to merge some of those topics. One of the things that I do like about that is that it has 4 key stakeholder groups to start including. So we've got to have those conversations with the right people at the table, talking about what this means. I think that that would be helpful so that people who are working on AI ethics in an organization or trying to stand up their responsible AI frameworks have an idea of what some of the existing processes are from an IT audit perspective, as well as maybe what some of the existing challenges are. I think for me, from an organizational perspective, we've got to break down the walls and the silos about cybersecurity audits, IT audits, responsible AI ethics audits, and really just start joining all of those resources together to figure out what is the best plan for the organization.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing that insight. I feel like as things become increasingly fluid and teams have to work together, it's important for everyone involved to acknowledge the gravity of what all of this entails.
Absolutely.
How everyone can get a hold of that concept. Perfect. Yeah. So I've got a second question from Lori B. from Ohio Health. Is there a collaboration or repository of common problems or biases with AI so that new technology can consider them in advance?
I don't know if there is a common repository, but there are many organizations who are leading in this space who have kind of developed some of the normative kinds of problems. I check out the United Nations for sure. I check out World Economic for sure. I check out Responsible AI and all of the work that they are doing. So I would say to start there. And also I might have mentioned that Microsoft has a whole thing around responsible AI. And the reason why that they stood up their teams around responsible AI are because of some of the biases that we've seen within the technologies and how they make their way into communities. So instead of creating things from scratch, I would absolutely advise people to start taking a look at some of these global organizations and how they are looking at doing it. Salesforce is another organization that has created teams to make sure that they are adding ethics into their whole entire AI lifecycle. So I would start there because I don't know if there is a common repository. What people are starting to address, though, are the tenets of responsible AI, which comes out of that study around bias, and that's fairness, transparency, explainability, auditability, and a number of other considerations. Justice is now there, trust is now involved in that, all the social considerations. So absolutely start looking, I would say, at around responsible AI and who's doing what, because they are trying to or are building the right processes and documents to address bias.
Awesome. Thanks so much for sharing those resources. My follow-up was, if there's not, can you share some organizations that are taking those appropriate steps and are good organizations to kind of model behavior after?
Yeah.
So thanks for just already including those for us.
Sure.
Great. Those were the two questions I had for you today. Before we conclude, I do want to mention that if you missed Elizabeth's keynote, recordings of all of the DataConnect presentations are available within our community platform today. And then one more follow-up for you, Elizabeth. If people want to connect or see what you're working on next, where can they find you?
I am most active on LinkedIn. It's where I get to do and use more than 240 characters to kind of share a little bit about what I'm doing and connecting with people all over the world. So absolutely connect and follow me on LinkedIn.
Great. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it greatly.
Thank you.